Good evening. I welcome you all. My name is Surya Prakash Soni. I'm trustee in AICCT and FIAV. So this is an initiative called Vichar, and Vichar, we bring all diverse speakers from the community in Victoria and for that matter across Australia. What we want to bring out of this webinar series is that every one of us has got hidden talent. Talent, everyone is made for something, and we need to share our knowledge, experience with rest of the community. With that, together we will grow bigger as a community, we will grow stronger. So that's the objective. So those of you who are first time listener of this webinar or listening it on the YouTube, please like and subscribe to YouTube and like it on Facebook. Join our WhatsApp group. WhatsApp group details are usually shared with the messages. And with that WhatsApp group, you will get a notification only. No other messages are floated in that group. And with that, we'll also encourage community members to come forward, bring new diverse speakers on very diverse topic. We are not narrowing down our speakers to one area only. We want very diverse speakers in this forum, and this forum is for the community. We are all together, we are all friends, and we want our local talent to come forward. Don't need overseas or international speakers for that matter. We have tons of talent in the town. So without further delay, I would now request Vasuji to welcome and introduce our speaker, Gayathri ji. Welcome, Gayathri ji, and over to you, Vasuji.
Thank you so much, Suri and Gayathri, for this opportunity. And before I start, what a beautiful initiative, Suri ji. Excellent initiative. May this grow leaps and bounds, and many more people in the community benefit out of this. My purpose here to just to introduce Gayathri today, and my name is Vasu Srinivasan. I am the director of Sarayu, Australia. Over to speaking about Gayathri, and I've known Gayathri from the day she is born. That is the way I know her. And at a very, very young age, she has shown interest in dance and story writing. And seeing that interest, she went and joined the dance in Bharatnatyam with Dr. Chandrabanu. And after learning for over 12 years, she did her Arangetram in 2009. And also with her passion for theater and storytelling, she specialized at Presbyterian Ladies College, where she went for her schooling. She took theaters and dramatics as a specialization, and she has won some state awards during VCE for her interest in theaters. And then with the dance and theater, and also added to the Chinmaya mission, the spiritual background, these three made a very good combination for her to go back and tell our stories. And she has started a project, Katha project. Maybe I can share an inside story how the whole thing began. Basically, being a mother for two of her sons, she started telling the bedtime stories. At some point of time, she would have thought this could be a great idea for other mothers who would like to tell the bedtime stories. Why don't I record whatever the stories I tell? And that's how the Katha project has started from as I know it. And I'm a very strong subscriber. I listen to all her storytelling episodes, and it has been a great, I personally like it. So it's very apt that she shares her knowledge on why she started and what she's doing. I'm equally keen to hear, like all of you, and our journey in this storytelling project. Congratulations and best wishes to Gayathri. Over to Gayathri.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, for a day job, she's a banker, and she works in the consulting area in the banking environment. That's what her day job, and her passion is storytelling. Thank you. Over to Gayathri.
Thank you, Appa, and thank you, Suriji. Before I start, I'd just like to do a quick welcome to country to acknowledge all the elders past, present, and future. I'd also like to thank my gurus, and my gurus are my spiritual gurus, my artistic gurus, and also, most importantly, my parents. They have also been my gurus who have taught me everything I know and who have really passed down the passion for my culture and our traditions. And they have really inspired me allowing me to explore my passions, whatever they are and whatever they may be. And they put me in my dance classes. They took me to dance classes. They encouraged me to perform on stage, and they encouraged me to tell stories and write stories. So a big thank you to all my gurus. For I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without their help, their blessings. So from there, I think my father, summarized why I love telling stories. It's not that I used to spin tales as a child. It's more so that I loved the idea of being able to use my imagination to bring together, to create new worlds and have people feel something when they listen to stories that I tell. And stories, I'll get to this and I'll open the forum because I do want to keep this quite a little bit of an interactive session. Stories can be in a lot of different mediums. It can be from grandmother to grandchild. It can be reading a book. It can be listening to a song that tells a story. It can be watching a piece of dance or performing a piece of dance. It can surprisingly also be in a boardroom. People tell stories to make a sales pitch. People tell stories to get people to see value in what they're doing. So stories come in all shapes and forms. They come in so many different mediums. And the technology that we have in our modern day supports so many new ways that stories can be conveyed to not just mother to child in a bedroom before a child sleeps, but to millions of people across the world. So we also have to thank technology for being a vessel in which stories can be shared to so many more people than we used to be able to. So I think where the Katha project started was, as my father said, was I wanted to tell stories to my kids. And I realized that so many mothers want to tell stories to their children, but I don't want them just to hear stories of princes and princesses like Cinderella or Spider-Man or Superman. I want children to be able to be inspired by their own traditions. I want them to be inspired by the characters from the Puranas, from the Hindu culture, who are equally as brave, if not more, who are equally as inspiring and hold so many values that we want to be able to pass on to the next generation. So what better way to tell stories to bring out this love for our culture and our traditions by putting the characters in these stories on the same pedestal that children put Spider-Man or Superman. So that's the idea of where the Katha project started. And I've learned a lot in running a podcast and creating a podcast, being a creative director for a podcast and a producer. I've learned so much, and hopefully over the next little bit of time, I can share some of not only what I have learned over my many years of telling stories and some of the techniques that I have found make stories quite compelling, but also what are some of the things that I have learned in starting a podcast, and what are those things if there are people out there who would like to start a podcast of their own. I just want to say it's not that difficult, and it's very easy to be able to do that. So I'll share some basic podcast starter pack items. So on that note, I won't spend too much time on the introduction. I'll jump into my content itself. So just bear with me while I share my screen. I'll just make sure that everyone can see the screen. A thumbs up would be great.
Yep, screen visible. Yep.
Thank you. So storytelling masterclass. finding your voice in the world of podcasting. So I found my voice very early as a child. I was always telling lots of stories and writing lots of stories. But today, I want to go through 5 key areas, which is one, your authentic voice. Number 2, crafting stories and what that looks like and how we can do it. 3, storytelling techniques. 4, as I mentioned before, podcast starter pack. How is it that you can start a podcast? What is it that you need? And finally, what does it feel like? What are the things that we need to remember when we are behind a mic? So I'm just going to, before I jump into topic 1, I would like to open the forum, and I did give a little bit of a sneak peek answer into the question that I'm about to ask, but I'd love to hear where people hear stories. Where do stories exist? And please feel free to unmute yourself to quickly answer that. Where is it that we see stories?
Everywhere.
But I'd love it, and please do be specific as well. It can be from a storybook to so many other things. So get creative and think about where is it that we see stories around us, stories being told around us.
From parents, from school teachers,
Yes.
and yeah, from friends, basically.
Yes, absolutely.
Grandparents.
Grandparents, yes.
Yep.
Movies.
Movies, there we go.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
branching out. Movies, fantastic.
And our own experiences.
Yes, our own life is a story, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw it out a little bit broader. I want us to think about when we're driving on the highway and what is it that we see?
Road.
A road, yep. Okay.
Journey.
A journey, yes. Think, okay, I'll give you, what about a billboard? Is that not telling a story? Is advertisements not telling a story?
Yeah.
Advertisements are telling stories. If there is anyone that works in sales, I know my husband Sham is on the call. He is a salesman. He will tell stories in order to sell the products that he is looking to sell. I know my father runs a business. You will tell a story. Where else? A couple more ideas? I want us to think beyond the world of just books.
Yeah. Somebody has put it in the nature, clouds.
Nature. Sorry, I'm
Trees.
not reading the chat. Thanks.
Yeah. Nature, cloud, trees, the
All
morning
tell
walks. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's just it. The idea is that anything and everything can be a story. The inspiration for stories comes from all around us. TVs, music, dance, all of these tell stories. Artwork, if we look into history, history itself is a story, but if we look into history, all artists, painters, sculptors, all these people are trying to tell stories. And the idea is that it is human nature to want to tell stories. And it is within our own nature to want to share something that is very true to us, very meaningful to us. And that's where stories are really born. And I think that is a very nice segue into my first topic, which is your authentic voice when it comes to storytelling and how important your authentic voice is in order to create stories. And I want to use that as the first topic because it's the thing that we should always remember, that when we're trying to tell a story, if we're not authentic, you will never be able to capture an audience's interest. So, your authentic voice. What does authenticity mean? Authenticity, and I did a quick Google search on what is the definition of authenticity. And I was trying to pluck and choose different elements of this word authenticity. And what I was really finding is that authenticity depends on a uniqueness of your tone, your perspective, and rhythm. And that uniqueness is what comes from yourself. And when you are able to reveal your own tone, your own perspective, and your own rhythm, that story becomes very believable. And suddenly people are interested. And that's the one thing that we all want to do. When we're telling a story, we don't want people to be bored. So in order to make people interested and keep people interested, the first thing that we should always remember is to be authentic and make it about you. Make it something that's real to you, not just a performance version of you. I am telling a story, therefore I need to be an exaggerated caricature of myself. No, you don't need to do that. If that's something that you feel is authentic, fantastic. But it doesn't need to be this big, bold caricature or a dramatic version of you. It can just be you. And it takes time to find that, of course, and it takes time to find your authentic voice, because we always try to put on a veil or put on some sort of a mask of what we think other people want to hear from us. But it's so important that when we tell a story, that we always start with, who is telling the story? I am telling the story. And unless I am making it completely my own, in my own words, in my own way of telling stories, it's not my story anymore. It's someone else's story. So I'm not going to say the do's and don'ts of what an authentic voice is. That contradicts what I'm trying to say. But I will say what we should remember and what we should be conscious of when we are trying to find our own authentic voice. And I'm going to assume that we are looking to write stories and present stories. So remember, first thing, when you're writing, write as if you would talk. Because that way, when we talk to people, when we tell stories from friends to friends, from mother to child, parent to child, neighbor to neighbor, you talk. That's our medium of communicating stories and has been for thousands of years. So when we're looking to write stories, why do we suddenly change our tone and try to make it more formal, try to use big fancy words? It's not necessary. Write like you talk and it will be more authentic. Number 2, experiment and reflect. What that means is try one way of speaking, try another way of speaking, and try it again. Keep experimenting with different styles of your voice. Keep experimenting with what feels natural to you, and then go back and see, how did that feel? How did it feel to tell a story in this way versus a different way? How did it feel to talk slowly versus talk fast, to talk loud versus talking soft? The more you experiment, the more comfortable you start becoming in what is authentically, realistically you. And finally, it will evolve. As children grow and mature, as do adults grow and mature, we keep evolving, and our authentic voice it's almost like the diamond in the rough. The more we experiment and reflect on what is us and what makes us successful, the more we evolve, and let it evolve. Don't stick to something saying, I started off doing it like this, and therefore I need to always be that way. Not at all. Let your voice and let your authenticity, let your story evolve. And that will also be, that natural progression will actually help you be more authentic. Finally, on the other side, be conscious of, don't imitate anyone. We always want to say, well, that is a really good storyteller. Amitabh Bachchan's voice is so fantastic, isn't it? I wish I could talk like him. No, but that's him. Don't imitate anyone else. Be you. And that's more valuable to the listener, to the audience, than anything else. Perfectionism. We always want, and I think even when we look at our careers in the corporate world, Agile says this, don't expect to be perfect immediately. It's okay to make mistakes, learn from those mistakes. If you keep saying, no, it's not right, I need to keep going, I need to keep trying and testing before I take my story out to the world, you'll never put anything out there, because we never feel like what we've created is perfect. It's okay, put it out there, see what happens. Don't strive for perfectionism immediately. Go out there, have some learnings, and then you can come back and you will evolve. And finally, the fear of judgment. It's in our nature, as it's beautiful to see children just say things, isn't it? And then sometimes it's in our adult nature to say, oh no, don't say that. Oh, don't say it like that. Oh, you can't say this and you can't say that. but children have no fear of judgment and how beautifully they tell stories. So let's go back to that childlike quality where we're not afraid of what other people are going to think of us. Let that fear of judgment go and put the story out there. And in fact, we're more likely to have people be very receptive. So that is a quick summary on how is it that we can find an authentic voice within our stories. So moving on, did we want to open up to any questions? And I will do this because I don't want to keep talking for so long. If there is any questions, please do put your hand up. I can't see the chat. So if someone has the chat and there are any questions, please do let me know.
I will just add one point that, as you said, be yourself. The additional reason there is once you are natural to yourself, it's more sustainable, because at some point, if you're imitating somebody, at some point you'll get tired or you'll get discouraged and you can't sustain. So sustaining your passion pattern is more important, which can only be possible in your natural authenticity way, what you just said. Thank you.
100%.
Any other questions from the audience or suggestion, comments?
Gayathri, Sham.
Yes.
I've just got a quick question in terms of the target audience itself. I know you're saying be authentic. Just out of curiosity, do you first decide on the audience first, or decide on the story first, like in terms of what you want to tell or put it out there? Which one do you come up with first?
I promise my husband hasn't seen my presentation before this, and that's why he's asking this question. I'm about to get to that in the next slide, so bear with me. It's again, very good segue. I'm going to get to that in 1 minute, if no one else has any other questions. No? Okay, let me answer that question, Sham. So, crafting stories. It's always very, very important to have, there's 3 elements to crafting stories. 1, what is our purpose? 2, who is our audience? And 3, what is the connection that we're making? These are essentially what we need to figure out as storytellers before we go ahead and create stories. So, purpose. Why do you want to share a story? So, to answer Sham's question, do you think of the story first or the audience first? Before thinking of the story or the audience, please go back and ask yourself why you want to tell the story that you are about to tell. Because having a clear why is crucial to ensuring that your story is believable, is interesting, is of value, and your why will keep you completely anchored, because you'll always go back to making sure that your story comes back to your vision, your purpose of telling that story. So always start with the why. And I guess when you put the overlay of whether it's that you're writing a book, whether you're starting a podcast, when you're looking to do a dance, whatever it is, whatever story and whichever medium that you're looking to tell, say, well, what is my vision for this particular story in 12 months, in 2 years, in 5 years? Will it evolve? Will it keep growing? How is this particular story? How am I going to carry this story forward, or the stories that I tell forward? And that is the purpose and vision that you're always going to wanting to come back to. And then on the next element of purpose is at the end of your story, whatever that may be, what is it that you want to leave your audience with? What is it that you want them to remember? Is it your voice on a podcast behind a piece of artwork? Is it a particular message that you want them to remember about the story? Is it a moral that you want them to remember? Is it the sales pitch, or is it the value that you want to sell? What is it that you want to leave behind as a mark that your story has been told? So start with your purpose. Then you go on to your audience. Who are you talking to? Am I talking to a 3-year-old child? Am I talking to a school? Am I talking to an audience of adults? Understanding who you're going to be talking to is so crucial, because that's going to change the tone of your story. And I'll give you a bit of an example. I tell stories for I as a Balvihar teacher, I take students who are from grade 4 to 6. Once a week, I take a Balvihar class, and these students are sort of that pre-teenage, just before they're hitting high school. And the way that I have to tell them a story is that I have to be a little bit cool. I have to, I have to relate things. I have to relate the Mahabharata and the Ramayana to their life. And I have to make it not so dramatic, but I have to make it a little bit laid back and a little bit cool, and I have to make the characters talk a little bit differently, change the tone a little bit differently, because that's how my audience of, 11, 12-year-olds are going to connect to the story that I'm going to tell. At the same time, when you listen to my podcast, I'm a little bit more dramatic because I'm also trying to capture the minds and the imagination of 5-year-olds. So I do need to be a little bit more dramatic. I do need to use different voices. I need to understand who I'm trying to rope into my story and listen to me more. And that way, I'm going to change the way that I'm going to tell that story. And again, when I'm talking to adults, of course, I need to have a little bit more structure. I need to be a little bit more formal so that they are receptive and they don't think I'm childish and immature. So it's really important to understand who your audience is and what they are looking to hear. And that goes back to my second point in audience, which is, what is it that my audience wants to hear? Do they want to just hear a dry story, or do they want some emotion? What are they looking to get out of connecting or listening to my story? Again, I'll give an example. When I do a dance, I have an audience of mostly, I'm going to say, maybe youth, teenagers and above, who are really connecting to the dance form that I'm doing. And what then I want them to feel is, what do they want to hear? What do they want to see? They want to see something come alive. I need to be dramatic. I need to make them feel something. So what is it? Understanding what your audience wants to hear is so important, again, because you need to then change your story to give them what they want to hear. Because we're not only telling stories for ourselves, we're telling stories for the people that are listening to them. If you don't have a listener or a reader or a watcher, what's the purpose of the story that you're telling? And finally, how do they want to hear it? Do they want, and this is quite basic, do they want to read the story? Do they want to see the story? Do they want to listen to the story? Understand that and what connects there, what medium connects them and pulls them in, and also tailor how you tell the story according to that medium. And finally, connection. Connection is bringing the purpose and the audience together. And what are the sticking points to bring the purpose and connection together? One, have it relatable. And what does that actually mean? So know the boundaries of your audience's comprehension. So if you can stretch their imagination, but if you stretch it too far and tell them things that they don't know or have no experience of, they're not going to connect, and suddenly you've lost them in the story. For example, if I try to tell a 5-year-old about the intricate physics of gravity, they're going to switch off. But if I tell a 5-year-old about the story of how a man was sitting under a tree and an apple dropped on his head, suddenly gravity makes sense. The way that we frame the story and make it relatable to our audience is what has them lean in and understand and enjoy. Number 2, be vulnerable. And what does being vulnerable mean is letting your emotions infiltrate into the story and letting you be a part of the story as the storyteller. For example, sometimes, and I want to call myself a little bit of an emotional person. I do get sucked into, when I see emotional scenes in movies, I tend to tear up. But when I'm telling a story, I want to be the character. And when I'm being the character and feeling what those characters are feeling, I'm able to tell that story so much better. And suddenly people, again, are connecting to the emotions of the story because I am emoting them. I am expressing them. So be vulnerable. Let yourself feel the emotions of that story. And finally, detail. I don't want to hear that it was a nice day. I want to hear that the sky was blue and it was a warm, sunny day, and that I could feel the sun gently touch my skin. Suddenly, it wasn't just a nice day. You have now described something. You have now described the scene to your audience so that they can then connect in to the story that you're trying to describe because of the detail that you've included into the story. So the three elements, purpose, audience, connection, is so important when we're crafting stories. And I think we're all taught this as in our schooling life, how to write a story. And you see this in all books, all movies, all TV shows, what we call the arc, the story arc. And so a good story always has a setup. What's the premise? What's the tension then? Some problem is brewing, some tension is there. And then finally, there's the climax. Something has gone so wrong, or there's a problem that has to be solved, and now everyone is involved. All the characters are now involved in this problem that is facing them all. And then the characters go ahead and find a solution to that problem, and then they resolve the problem. So that a good story always has that arc. So when you're telling the story, when you know what your purpose is and who your audience is, and you found what is going to connect them to your story, always have this story arc and see how is it that you can be relatable, vulnerable, and detailed in all elements of this story. Okay, I'm going to pause. I know there was a lot of information there and I just kept talking, but please do. I'm just going to pause for feedback and questions.
Extraordinary. This slide is so intense, so much to absorb from there. And when you spoke about physics, the one thing which came to my mind straight away is that I was so amazed by that story of Chacha Chaudhary and Sabu in the childhood. And that when the Sabu used to get angry, there used to be volcano on Jupiter. What an interstellar relation of his anger to a Jupiter volcano used to touch me a lot. And also in the same story, when that Chacha Chaudhary's brain used to work faster than computer, when the computer was not so famous and popular at that time in our childhood, and used to so get pulled into those stories just because of those two special effect features of that story. So that relatable connection thing which you mentioned is extraordinary. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think what touched me is, why do you want to tell the story? That's a very, very important aspect of it. I think the audience and connection, all that, I think there should be innate as why do you want to tell a story? I think for that, you have a substance and then everything evolves around it. That is the nucleus or the seed for the story.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to add, like how Donald Trump, like he might come across as a dumb person and he speaks in a very layman term, but looking at this slide now, like he's talking to a certain audience and he seems so relatable to those guys, and that's why he's successful. So yeah, like it's sort of
no, you're
such
and
a perspective on things and why he's so successful.
100%, 100%. And if we go back, and again, I encourage after this session, when you're going back and thinking about, if you do think about this session, I'd love to have you think about, like you did, think about who those storytellers were. Who were the storytellers that you connected to, and understand why you connected to them. What made you say, hey, that person was a really good storyteller, and really try and dig into your own psyche and your own psychology as to why you felt that storyteller was relatable and was a good storyteller for you, because then you'll start picking and choosing, well, okay, that's the way that person crafted the story and connected to me. How is it that I can maybe use that so I can connect with my audience? So that's an exercise I encourage everyone to do.
With this one slide, you're giving big magic box to everyone. It's a highly transferable skill in every aspect of our life. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, well, I'll then move on to the next slide, which is probably one of my more my favorite slide, which is storytelling techniques. And I'm going to, I think this applies to whether you're thinking of writing a story or telling a story and orating a story. But I think, again, all of these things, these 8, remember, little key tips is so important when you're telling a story. Number 1, always start with a hook. And what that means is grab the attention. What is it that's going to grab the attention immediately? Is it that you're saying, I heard footsteps walking up the stairs? Suddenly they're like, oh, you heard footsteps walking up the stairs? Why? Whose footsteps? Where are you? Or you might say, you might be telling the story of the Ramayana, and you might be saying, in the bushes, there was a golden deer ready to come out. Why was the deer golden? There's a hook. You've grabbed the attention immediately. So what is the hook in your story? What is it that's going to make people say, tell me more? I want you to tell me more. What happened? Why is that happening? And then have a narrative arc. And that goes back to the previous slide. What is your narrative arc? And always when you're writing a story or getting prepared to orate a story, make sure that you have structure. A story needs that structure. Otherwise, it's almost like letting marbles go. You have these golden pieces of glass that everyone wants, but unless you channel them in the right way, suddenly you've let them all go and you don't know, the listener, the audience doesn't know where to go. So make sure that your story always follows an arc and follows that structure, because that's what's going to take this audience through the journey that you have planned for them. Next one is show, don't tell. And it's interesting because my son, who's in grade 3, will actually say this, that they're learning this in school as a grade 3 student, which I find amazing, because they're learning to tell stories at that age. And he'll say, show, don't tell. And what does that mean is, going back to my previous slide, which is be detailed, use descriptions. A story needs descriptions. If I am closing my eyes and I am listening to a story, I want to be able to picture it. And I'm not going to picture the golden deer in the bushes unless I say the deer was slender. It had 2 ears that was pricked up in attention. It had slim, small legs. The bushes were thick, but the deer was walking slowly and it was peeping its tiny, small head out from behind the bushes, just enough for Sita to see a glint like a diamond coming from behind the bushes. So again, I actually didn't plan that story, but what I'm saying is that if you use descriptions, that is what's going to be able to have your audience member picture this story, and they want to picture. The stories should trigger the imagination. Next, have relatable characters. Humanize your characters. Not all your characters can be perfect. That is not what is relatable. You want your characters to have flaws because your audience as people have flaws. We are jealous, we are angry, we are sad. Humanize your characters to have those emotions, because your audience member is going to say, yeah, that would make me sad too. How does that character deal with it? Humanizing the character that you're now crafting and creating makes your audience want to say, I am like that. I would do this, but what does this character do? Next, repetition and callback. And what that means is create a theme in your story. What is your theme that you're going to constantly refer back to? Because that's also going to push your purpose through the story. And Again, the way, again, not to use my own example too much, but the way I did that was in the Katha project, I did the entire Dashavataram series. And like I mentioned right at the beginning when we started, was that my purpose was that I wanted our children to see the characters of the Dasavatar like superheroes. So in every episode, when Lord Vishnu took an avatar to come down to earth, that was the superhero moment. I always tied it back to say the theme is that our gods are superheroes. And I kept referring back to that. That was the moment that when Vishnu became Narsimha, he was a superhero. When Krishna came to kill Kamsa, he was a superhero. When Ram came to defeat Ravan, he was a superhero. That theme was something that I created and I consciously referred back to in every episode because that's the message that I wanted to take across to the children. And the next one is subtext and layers. This is a little bit harder to do with young children, but as adults, when we're reading books, sometimes we'll take away different meanings. And sometimes when I read a book, I will find a different layer or a different message in that book or movie than, the person sitting next to me. And what that is showing is that the story is demanding me to think. Have your audience members think. You need to demand their thought because it's saying, I want you to think about what is happening in the story. And when the audience member is clicking in and thinking about it, it means that they're connecting to the story. Because if they're just listening, leaned back and scrolling on their phone, you haven't got their attention. You want them to think about what's going on. And the way that you do that is have subtext, have different meanings that potentially, depending on people's life stage, depending on people's experiences, they may take away a slightly different message. And it's hard to do. That one's a very tricky one to do. Not finally, but build tension. And I think I said that in the story arc as well, which is throughout the story, you want your audience to say, and then what happened? Did that really happen? How did that happen? Why did that happen? Because there is tension there. You're making them lean in and question what the motivations are for the characters, what's going to happen next. They want to know more. They want to know how this story ends. And I think there's a song from a Tamil movie that came out a few years ago to say that a story is really boring when it doesn't have an ending. And what that means is that it just goes on and on and on. But when a story goes on and on and on, there is no tension. There is nothing that grabs the people in and saying, well, what happens next? How did this end? So build that tension in your story. And finally, again, I'm repeating a few things that I've said before, but I'm reiterating those maybe, is don't underestimate emotion. When you as a storyteller are feeling something, you will make your audience members feel something. And one of the examples, even when I tell it, live to a class or to a live storytelling audience, is the story of Shabari. And I would love for everyone to listen to the Katha project and go listen to that particular episode, because that particular episode always makes me quite emotional. And the one part that makes me emotional is when, I'm just hoping that everyone may know the story of Shabari. If not, please do listen to the Katha project, is when Shabari, this old woman that has lived in the forest for many, many years, for decades, waiting to see Lord Ram, when she finally sees Lord Ram walking towards her hut. That moment I find very emotional. And I was very conscious that when I narrated that story, I put that emotion in. Because when I felt the emotion, the people around me and the audience members felt emotion. And that's going to make your story and the way that you tell your story so impactful. Okay, so I'm going to again pause there. If anyone has any questions or feedback, I'd love to hear again.
doesn't feel like we're listening an educational webinar. We're listening a beautiful story. And we can see all those techniques, what you're describing, coming out firsthand. Oh my God, so beautiful and very beautiful slides you have made. It's very appealing, can connect, relate, and oh my God, less words I can speak basically, but yeah, extraordinary. Thank you. And
I don't think so if everybody has listened to that song, because when I was going through this slide with you, I could only remember a song from movie Mr. Natwarlal. And that really talks about all this arc, and I could hear there used to be some words. Okay, and then what happened? Okay, and then what happened? Oh my God, why are you not telling us? So I could see that things that you're explaining, and I'm visualizing that song in my brain for trying to explain myself about all of these tricks.
Yeah. I think there's a very thing. If you're saying something, if the audience are thinking about that thought and taking it to the next layer, they were able to relate, I think the story had a success.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Gayatri, I'm just trying to relate. I mean, like back in India when we were raised, from the very young age, there was always this thing that we wanted to be who we were not. You know what I mean? Constantly being judged, and somewhere I think a lot of us, while we are children, we are authentic, but as we grow old, because of what the society wants us to be, we start to be someone else. And the very fact that you mentioned that, why don't you bring your emotions in storytelling? I think that sort of has been lost because people really don't want to show, because they've been told that people might probably judge you or whatever it is. So there's a lot of subconscious things that are holding us back, and I think it's so liberating to see the way you presented, and so that we can probably focus on those things again and hopefully overcome and be good storytellers.
Absolutely. I think, and I said that on my first slide, which is the fear of judgment will always hold us back and make us feel like we shouldn't, not that we can't, that we shouldn't tell a story, that we shouldn't express ourselves. So be very conscious of that fear of judgment, because we feel like we can't make mistakes. I think it's in our nature as adults to say, well, I can't make a mistake because I should know this better. I should know better. No, it's okay. Make the mistake. Express yourself. Feel the emotion. That's okay. And that's only going to make you a better storyteller.
Ritaji, you were going to say something as well. You can unmute, say now. Nothing? No, you unmuted initially. You're unmute, still unmute, Ritaji.
Oh, excellent, Gayatri.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Suddenly I became a child. I'm listening.
Good. That's what we want. It's amazing because when there is a good storyteller, I'm not going to say when there is a good storyteller in front of us, telling a story that we know really, really well, it doesn't matter if we know the story really well. We will still want to listen because the storyteller itself is creating magic that we may not have felt before. So be that storyteller. Create that magic is what I encourage, 100%.
One thing from the show Don't Tell thing coming to my mind, and which was coming previously as well, is that sometimes the way we describe and the same story can have very diverse and multiple interpretation by the audience. Everyone can see different details and absorb and get fascinated by certain detail of the storytelling. So even though it's the same story, but a different meaning to every different person. And similarly, when we saw Ramayana in childhood, what we were more excited about was that arrow hitting and creating fascinating colors and lights and all, which is what excited in childhood. But when we grow up, we listen to the same story again and made a different meaning to us. So it's a very same storytelling has got different meaning coming out at different age or different mindset as well.
Absolutely. And I was just about to say and that's where it goes back to the subtext and layers of a good story. And I don't want to say that the Ramayana is just a story. It is history. But when we start looking at the different subtexts and layers, we will see it very differently as a child as to an adult. And have you ever noticed that you might watch a movie multiple times, and every time you watch that movie, you've uncovered a new joke. Oh, that wasn't funny before, but I actually only noticed it this time, and that's actually really funny this time. Oh, I didn't understand what he said last time, but this time I understood it. And that all goes back to, again, the subtext and layers. Our different mindsets and different perspectives will change as to how we as an audience member take on a story. And that's the mark of a good storyteller.
Yep. And also this repetition and callbacks, I personally use it myself in practical life. It's very important, a transferable skill anywhere, whatever we do. Repetition and callbacks are really necessary to maintain that awareness in the audience or in our near and dear or whatever the right audience we want to pass, communicate, make the permanent marker of our message basically to in somebody's memory. Repetition is callbacks is really important. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. So I think that's I'm going to draw a dotted line there in terms of the storytelling aspect and the, crafting stories. I will jump into more of the podcast aspect because, again, I started a podcast about 2 years ago, and I've had a lot of learnings. I didn't have anyone to teach me how to run a podcast. I had kind of learned it by Googling a lot of it myself and making mistakes and learning. So I'm going to jump into more of, well, what are the things that you need if you are interested in starting a podcast? What is it that can help you? What is the starter pack? And also, what does it mean to be behind a mic? That last slide, behind the mic, I think it also goes back to public speaking as well. You can use those same techniques as a public speaker. So it's not all boring how to start a podcast. There is something interesting coming when it comes to public speaking. So, podcast starter pack. What do you need to get a podcast up and going? It's actually very simple. So again, there are 6 things that you probably should, 6 categories of things that you should probably set yourself up with. Number 1 is the gear. Now, anything that you see as that's got a little asterisk marks on it, I'm going to say is optional. The first thing, so I will get to that, but the first thing is your gear. A microphone, I'm going to say that this is a must-have because, I mean, the first podcast, if you go back and listen to the first Katha project, I actually recorded it on my phone using an iPhone mic. It's not very clear. It's a little bit grainy. So it's really important to get yourself a good mic. They don't have to be extremely expensive. Secondhand mics, there's so many out there on the market. It doesn't have to be super expensive, but a good microphone goes really far. And then the other 3 things, I've actually put an asterisk. Headphones. I personally don't use headphones when I record a podcast. I know it helps a lot of people to manage their voice and hear their voice back as they talk. I actually find it really distracting. I don't like hearing my voice, which is very ironic. But I find that I just like talking, and it's the pain of the listener to listen to my voice. Next is a pop filter. I recently learnt what a pop filter is. I'm actually going to bring mine around so you can maybe hopefully see it in the camera.
Yeah, I've got a blurred screen,
I've got a
so
blurred screen. It's actually, you might see it in recording studios. It's that little mesh that sits in front of a mic. That actually just helps improve audio quality. A lot of us we may not notice it, but when we talk, we enunciate certain sounds in our words. And a pop filter actually helps soften that. So for me, it was the p. And so when I used to say the sound p, it used to actually burn, and it used to make a little bit of a screeching sound on the recording. And it was quite distracting. And you actually hear that on the earlier episodes of the Katha project, is that the p would be quite breathy or it would burn. And it's like making that kind of awful, sound that on the p sounds. So the pop filter for me helped reduce that and soften that a little bit. Or the other thing is you learn how to speak without those little extra enunciation of certain sounds. And finally, the boom arm is just essentially so that I don't have to hold a mic as I talk and record. It's actually just attached to my table, and I just swing the boom arm around when I'm ready to record, and then I just swing it back out once I'm done. I would say headphones, pop filter, and boom arm are not necessary. They're just helpful tools that can make it easier to record your podcast. Tech. So there's two key elements of doing a podcast, which is one, recording the podcast, and two, editing the podcast. You need both of these things. I'm not going to say they're optional. I go really basic. I record my podcast on the Apple Voice Notes. I don't use fancy software to record the podcast. I actually just use the Voice Notes app. I then take my recording and put it onto an editing software, and I use Soundtrap. I find that that's really easy to use. It also gives me the ability to use a lot of free sound effects, because I put sound effects on my podcast, and there's millions of sounds and sound effects that are available for me to use. There are lots of different other editing softwares. Some of them charge, some of them free. It just goes back to how what you want. If it's just your voice that you want, you could potentially use the free version of Audacity on your laptop. You don't have to spend money on your recording and editing softwares. It's just how complex your editing and recording needs are. Number 3, a platform. Again, not a optional item. This is a must-have. So a podcast hosting platform essentially creates an RSS feed that can then be used. So that RSS feed, it's almost like if you want to call it like a URL, that RSS feed is then, you then put it onto your Spotify account or your Apple Podcast, your creator side account for Spotify, your creator or podcaster side of things for Apple Podcasts. Sometimes some podcast hosting platforms will send it out to their own list of podcast streaming networks. I didn't know that I was on Audible, but apparently I am, because my hosting platform streams my podcast onto Audible for free. It also streams onto Amazon Music for free. So the hosting platform that I use is called Spotify for Podcasters. So my primary platform is Spotify, but I then use that RSS feed, which is like that URL, and put it onto Apple Podcasts as well. That was probably the trickiest part to figure out. Well, what are my platforms? What are my streaming elements? And where is it that I want my RSS feed to be able to be viewed? The next one is having a plan. This is where I can probably get better at, to be honest, and I'll be completely transparent with you. Episode scripts or outlines. It's so important to know what you're going to talk about in your given time. I try to keep my podcast not more than 15 minutes. Some episodes have gone a bit longer because the story has warranted that. But I really try to cap my episodes at 15 minutes. So for me, I have a script. I write the script and I read from that script so that I don't stray and make it too long. And I highly encourage that. Pardon me. If you are having a podcast that has an interview, have your interview questions ready to go. As you get more and more refined at doing interviews, you may have a set of base questions and then you can let the conversation flow, but that comes with experience. So have your base interview questions ready to go, and also talking points, because any interview that you do or conversation that you have, you don't want there to be silences or awkward moments. Always have a set of talking points that you can bring to keep a conversation going. And finally, plan your episode frequency. I would like to say that I'm a weekly or a fortnightly or a monthly podcast. I'm at the moment, when I'm juggling lots of things, the frequency for me tends to dip a little bit. I do need to get better at that, but it's the most successful podcasts out there. If you go and have a look at them, they stick to a very high frequency, but also a regular frequency, because that keeps your audience members engaged. Artwork. It can be as difficult or as easy as you want. So my podcast artwork is something that I actually created on Canva, and it was a free piece of art. It was a stock art. It was just the book that I've used and the Katha project underneath it, and my slogan, which is connecting through stories. So I kept my artwork quite simple and quite easy to remember. I didn't draw it. I used artwork that was available. Episode art, that's again optional. You don't need a new piece of artwork for every episode. I started drawing a little scene from each story that I was telling, and now it's become a part of my podcast production time that I take, which is I actually take the time to sit and draw a little bit of the story on my iPad. So I'd love for everyone to go and have a look at that on Instagram or on the podcast stream. It's not very good artwork, but it doesn't need to be. It's just an expression of your own creativity. And finally, promoting your podcast. Social media, I would say, is probably the easiest way to promote your podcast, and Instagram, Facebook. If you're brave enough, TikTok. I do not have a TikTok. I don't understand how to use TikTok, but that's okay. My audience is probably not on TikTok. My audience is usually parents who are making their children listen, or grandparents who are making their children listen. So ensure that your promotion is tailored to your audience. My audience or primary audience is not Gen Z kids. It's more so on the Facebooks and the social media on Instagram who will be able to pick it up and say, hey, yes, I want my children to listen to this. Events. I have done a few live storytelling events, and that's where I get my name out there that I am a podcast host who has a storytelling podcast. Again, very much optional. But finally, probably the most powerful method of promotion is word of mouth. Tell people that you're doing this. Again, I should get better at doing this myself. Tell people that you're doing it, because you would be amazed at how many people are looking for the content that you are ready to create. So tell people. So that's the podcast starter pack. Feel free to take a screenshot. Feel free to reach out to me and ask me about learnings and mistakes that I've made and things that I've, learned along the way. I'm happy to share that in a much more detailed conversation whenever someone wants. But I'm just going to keep moving because I don't think there'll be too many questions about this.
Yep. Let's keep moving. Thank you.
Let's keep going. Yeah. Okay, so behind the mic. Behind the mic can be behind a podcast mic, but I think these are really useful tips for public speaking as well. So I used to participate as a debater and do public speaking competitions because I really enjoyed doing that. I was on stage a lot. So these are the things that sort of helped me be a better public speaker. And I think you can also, if you take a look at, so many different public speaking courses, these are some of the things that they will really touch upon to say, well, really focus on these to be a better public speaker. Number one is enunciation. Be clear in the way that you speak. If you mumble the words, you'll lose your audience because they can't actually understand what you're saying. So enunciate your words, which means you might have to practice saying certain words before you go ahead and present. Pronunciation is the next one. We all have an accent. It's okay to have an accent. Please don't change your accent to suit what you think people want to hear. It actually will make it worse. Go back to my first slide, which is be authentic to yourself. It's okay to have an accent, and please maintain that accent because you will pronounce words in a particular way that you're comfortable with. And if you try to change the way that you speak, you won't actually pronounce words correctly. You will likely make it harder for yourself and your audience members to understand. But also, again, if there are key words that you are not able to pronounce properly, I would say, again, just a little bit of practice goes a long way to make sure that you're able to say certain words, because I know I still stumble sometimes. Editing does a lot of work for me. I will edit out things that I don't say correctly, but practice makes perfect there as well. Speed. Use speed to your advantage. Sometimes you talk fast to create tension, to build tension. He ran really quickly and the chase was behind him and he could hear the sirens going off. I'm using speed. And then I will say, but then the night was silent and you could hear pin drop. And I've completely slowed it down to build a different type of tension. And that will make you a better storyteller. And again, it's going to help create that emotion, which is my next point. And also with speed, use silence. Silence is a very powerful tool to use in your storytelling because, again, it's building that tension. Emotion, I think I've said this many, many times, build emotion into the way that you speak. I don't want to hear a robot talk. Trust me, it's boring and people will eventually stop listening. So build emotion, be exciting, be a little bit, be a little bit dramatic when you need to be more formal when you need to be. Understand what your story is and how emotion can play a part. And finally, posture. It's really important that and again, a lot of public speaking coaches will say this, is that when we slouch over and when we're looking down, our voice actually struggles to bring out what it needs to bring out. So whenever you're recording, whenever you're public speaking, make sure that you have quite an open posture, standing quite tall. Standing up when you're recording makes a huge difference as well because your body is forced to be open and let your vocal cords do the work and let your diaphragm do the work when you're projecting your words. Okay, so that's the hot tips on how to,
Yep.
be behind a mic, wherever that may be. That essentially brings me to the end of what I had prepared as a presentation. Again, I just would love to say thank you to Suriji for giving me the opportunity. I think I've learned a lot about myself and how I need to structure this kind of content. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. And thank you to everyone who has joined on a Wednesday evening or Wednesday afternoon in India. I really appreciate your support. And I hope that you've been able to take one small thing away.
I think we all constantly thanking you a lot throughout this presentation because we learned a lot and you have brought all our attention to your presentation and the way you're storytelling this is extraordinary. A few quick comments on this particular slide is that yes, I tried watch some YouTube video around speed as that your any presentation or anything should never be monotonous. It should always have variety of speeds throughout so to keep the audience attached because no matter what speed you choose, slow or fast, it will become monotonous and people will lose attention. To keep the attention with you, you need to slow or go fast throughout your presentation or speaking. In terms of, I had one more thought, but I lost chain of thought there. But yeah, any other comments from the audience around this? And since, but we'll do a word of thanks in the end, very end. Thank you.
I've just got to add one thing, Suraj. If somebody is interested, it's the words. There are certain words in English. They are called the plosive words. So generally, they are P, T, K, B, D, and G. That's what you use the pop filters for. But I've got a question for you, Gayathri. If you'll be happy to take that. So so for an hour length of podcast, I just want to understand the breakdown of the time that goes into creating that, let's say, 1 hour of podcast. Because yes, we always see the end product. I also sometimes, create YouTube videos for my business and everything. But and I just want to understand how it differs when the thought process behind is not a learning or a marketing video, but the thought process is for a podcast. So if you can give some insight on that, that would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, like I said, my podcast, each episode usually won't go more than 15 minutes. they are quite short. So an hour-length podcast will get probably longer. Some elements may be not as economies of scale. So some areas, the longer you get, maybe it's easier. But so essentially I'll tell you the elements that I do on a weekly basis to create the podcast. One is the script. I always write my script, like I say. And so I have the intro, the main story, and then the outro. So writing the script for me, when I was doing the Dasavatar, and within the Dasavatar, I did the Ramayan. So a lot of it was, I needed to condense the Ramayan into a finite and smaller number of episodes, and each episode had to be quite concise. And that probably took the longest time for me, is writing the script and making the script interesting and concise and still be able to tell quite a vivid story. So that did take a little bit of time. For stories that I know, it's actually a lot easier because I'm able to quickly write what I already know, and I don't need to summarize too much. So writing a script can take me anywhere between, if I have to do research, anywhere between an hour to 2 hours, because I'll also refine and make sure that, the message that I'm getting across is the right one. Then I've got the actual recording. Recording probably takes the least amount of time. That's the easiest part. For a 15-minute episode, accounting for some few mistakes that I never stop my recording when I make a mistake. I will keep going because, again, the beauty of a podcast that's not live is that I can edit out all my mistakes. So if I pronounce something wrong or read the wrong sentence, I'll just stop, I'll take a pause, and then I'll keep going. So the recording time, I would say max 20 minutes, as long as I can get a quiet house around me and I can record with a clean record. That's the easiest part. Third, editing. For me, this is probably my least favorite part, because I have to keep listening to my voice over and over again, edit out all the mistakes, and then find the right sound effects and layer the sound effects and make sure that the sound, all the different layers of the sound between my voice and the sound effects are all balanced correctly. So that takes about 3 hours. On average, it takes about 3 and a bit hours to make sure I'm getting the balance right. And then finally, the artwork. Again, this is surprisingly, I'm not an artist, but I actually really enjoy doing this part. And I'll usually do this while I'm listening to the final edit of the recording that I've done, or the edit that I've done. And that usually takes me anywhere between half an hour to 45 minutes. So if I didn't do the addition and maths along the way, but that's essentially the breakdown. If you don't have art that you're doing, minus that last 45 minutes. But otherwise, usually between the script to the final product, you're looking at about 5 to 6 hours of work per 15 minutes. Again, this could change depending on the complexity of the podcast that you're recording.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot for articulating that in a very descriptive manner. Thank you.
I'm very conscious of time, and we've learned extraordinary amount of things. Thank you so much, Gayathri ji, from this webinar. And there's already a lot of interest for a repeat session for kids and all, but I'll leave it to you and connect you to the right person at the end. But Chakri ji, welcome as a former president of Telugu Association. Do you want to make any comments and request all audience to make their final comments, and then we'll try to wrap up the session. Thank you. And one person who is doing some writing on the screen, please stop doing that. Thank you. And Gayathri ji, do you have any contact details or any final slide, or that's a final slide?
Well, no, that is my final slide. But I'm happy to share. Sorry, I should have put a slide with my contact details and my social media platforms. See, promotion. I definitely need to get better at that. You can follow the Katha project on, I'll do a little plug for myself. You can follow the Katha project on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I'm also available for free on Audible, apparently. You can follow me on Instagram, which at the Katha Project. And you can also reach out to me via email at the Katha Project AUS@gmail.com. So feel free. Or you can message me on LinkedIn and Facebook. Or
I'll share some details in the WhatsApp group. So yeah, over to you, Chakraji. Thank you.
So I heard the moment I heard about this and I heard about your Katha project, I immediately connected to LinkedIn and also started following it immediately. So first of all, Suriji, thank you for another phenomenal topic to discuss. You have been doing a good job. And Gayathri Garu, first of all, a big thank you for spending your time and enlightening us with this information. I have one question to you. I know that it's actually too late, but I will connect it offline. In the world of Insta Reels, especially with the kids and performing on the various songs and all those things, how we have to fine tune the kids into this world of podcasting as a parents.
Okay, that's a big topic. And I'd definitely like to connect with you, as in you want children to
Yeah, so I'll actually give you an intro actually. So we have a students community of 450 odd students learning our Telugu as one of the languages that we speak. And we also have the personality development trainings and all these do for the teachers who come as a volunteers. I'll connect with you offline and I'll speak in person and how we can collaborate actually to see and bring your expertise into the area of the next generation.
Definitely. Always open.
Okay.
Thank you, Chakraji.
Thanks for that. Yeah, thank you.
One closing question from me, Gayatriji, and which I should have asked earlier, and that everybody in the audience who is still connected to us, thank you, is that you would have noticed that last 1 hour or so, we would have forget about all other thing, what our day job and everything. And that's my question to you, Gayatriji. How important these activities are from our professional life, outside our professional life, to do such diverse things. And would you like to share your Vimalji? I think you're sharing some screen. Please don't do that. But yeah, Gayatriji, you got my question right. That how it is important. And
yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna say this because as a professional, so I like in the introduction, I do have a corporate career. I am also a mother. Those are the things that we have to do, right? We have to do those things. We have to have a job. Those, maybe some people are lucky, you don't have to, but most of us in this day and age have to have a professional career that we do from 9 to 5. What something like a passion project like the Katha project does for me, what something like being a Bharatnatyam dancer, I've done Bharatnatyam for 25 years, what that does for me is that it brings out my creative side. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to be a creative. You could on the side, do something. You could be a programmer, and that's maybe not what you do in your day job, but you find software development really interesting. Whatever that passion is, what that allows you to do is maintain your own, and this is probably an overused word, but your own mental health, because you're tapping into your own self and your own need for self-actualization. And doing something like this is so important to be able to fulfill that. We are not just people that can survive on, having a corporate career, day job that can eventually get quite dry. We all retire for a particular reason. Have something there that is your passion project that's going to keep your creative spark alive. Trust me, you will be a happier person for it.
thank you. I share the same sentiment with you. Thank you. Hageshi, Shailji, you want to make any closing comments? And Bhagwati ji, welcome. So we are all extended family here, and so I really need each other's support and comments and feedback for these sessions, and then that way we can grow together. That's fine, Shailji, if you're having issue unmuting yourself, but yeah, all good. So with that note, I'm very conscious we are 23 minutes over, but sincerely, thank you Gayatri ji. We've been connected for a long time, and I was so amazed since the day one I find out that you're doing very beautiful storytelling and really wanted to use your talent and skill for the better learning for the community and all. And today is the day we could finally hear you, and so mesmerizing presentation and webinar. We'll watch it again and again, and it has got very transferable skills for us and day-to-day life, and we'll learn a lot. And definitely, I'll encourage all to break your stigma around trying new things and definitely become a good storyteller. Start your podcast, write a book as from past webinars, do something new and be a different person, better person in our life. And together, that way we can grow together. Thank you. Thank you, Gayatri ji.
Thank you so much. Thank you. everyone.
Bhagwati ji unmuted for something.
नमस्ते
Namaste.
मैं तो
good.
इंग्लिश बोलने हिंदी
जी कोई
बोलती
नहीं, हिंदी में बोले, no problem जी. Bhagwati ji is my relative from Bangalore and she is connecting regularly. Thank you. Yep.
नमस्ते आप सबको सुन रही थी, बहुत अच्छा लगा.
Thank you. Thank you.
इनको गायत्री जी को भी सुना बहुत देर तक, बच्चों के बारे में, इसके बारे में, सबके बारे में बताया इन्होंने, बहुत अच्छा लगा. मैं किसके बारे में बोलूं, बोलो.
No, all good. Thank you. I think we are very over time, but
हाँ.
thank you for your support and connecting all.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
Chaliye, thank you all, Ragini ji, Ashish ji, for joining. And with that note, good night, everyone. And we'll meet next Wednesday. I'll share the details who is next speaker in coming few days. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.